anytime when you want it. I give you my love when you need it. I paid all your price and you fool me. No one stress you to do for me. Still I give you the best of me. Trying to work right all over me. Now enough is enough for me. There's no one can love you. Ooh, the way you love me. Ooh, wish I could love you. Ooh, the way you love me.
Good evening and welcome to Ballot 23 on mainland 98.3 FM, the sound of Lagos. Oh yes, a lot has been happening ever since the flag off of the campaign season for the elections in 2023. That's September 25, and a lot has been happening. Now we've been hearing a lot from our various candidates, presidential, gubernatorial, and legislature, and it's been quite an interesting ride. Especially here on Ballot 23, we've tried to bring in or try to make as much room as possible for all of the parties, equal opportunity for all parties. Let's hear them out. Let's hear what they have to offer. Because one thing that we are all certain of is that come 2023, there's a lot that is going to be challenging the status quo. A lot of people are, going to be moving away from the norm. Usually we hear that, there are some states, one party states, there's no how another party can't get anything, from a particular state. Or we've had conversations as regards, this time around, social media seems to be playing a major role in the campaigns as of now, just as it did some 8 years or so ago in 2011, 2015, when there was some sort of change also, that there was some sort of, yes, let me put it that way, change also. So now in this particular campaign season, with the many innovations that's coming in from INEC, also the fact that for the first time since democracy was introduced into the Nigerian electoral system, we have more than two major candidates on the presidential level. It's quite an interesting one. It has been very intriguing, and not just 3, 4 actually, 4 major parties pushing out their candidates. And right now I think this is the first time that it's very difficult for us to determine a winner or a loser, to the point that even INEC themselves are already preparing from a possible runoff. All right, so it's been quite an interesting one. And also with the town hall meeting, the town hall series that we've also been watching closely on Ballot 23. On Monday we had that conversation because there was the town hall meeting that was held on Sunday. That was a conversation on Ballot 23 on Monday. And today we're also going to be looking at one of the presidential candidates his conversation or his interview thereabout with the BBC. However, as usual, we have a guest with us joining us on Ballot 23 because that's what we do on Wednesdays, because we have plenty time. Okay, so we try to bring a candidate, ensure that we bring a candidate to the table to have a conversation. What exactly are you offering, or what should the people be looking forward to, receiving from your candidature? Or if you actually win, what should people to be looking at? And one thing that we've been trying to do on Ballot 23 is to put some sort of spotlights on the legislature, because everybody seems to focus on the president or the governor, the executive generally. Whereas what's most important is if there are changes to be made, these are the ones who are actually everybody is looking at, the national, trying to talk to this State House of Assembly SDP. Just some week profound table on joining us on for or what Sulere 2 constituents sort of change at the Hounded before we bring on our guests. So it's Ballot 24 candidate Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu. So stay with us.
Your Excellency, thank you very much for talking to the BBC. First of all, how are things going with you with the campaigning?
Things are going very well. I'm very, very confident that this election, free and fair, I'm the front runner. And that is why I'm getting many arrows.
We'll talk about one or two of the arrows in a bit. Let's talk about your priorities. If you do win the elections in February and you're sworn into office come May 29th, what are your priorities?
Security and economic recovery to accelerated development, to get Nigeria employed and get English from that. Monetary policy needs to be changed. Subsidy needs to be decided upon, and
security is a big problem for many Nigerians. And I remember in this very room in 2015, I asked President Muhammad Buhari when he was campaigning about that issue, and he said, well, we know what we're going to do, we know what we're going to do. The problem still persists. What are you going to do specifically?
It actually reduced. I would defend him for that. Then 17 local governments and about 4 states where we have flags of foreign jihadists in Nigeria. That is no more. That is long gone. To start a chaos is easy. To bring normalcy and redecorate is more difficult. Here we are, barriers degraded, but not completely eliminated as well. Then we talk briefly of lethal weapons and ammunition and technology equipment that could help accelerate the cleanup of those people. The West is yet to feel comfortable enough with the Buhari administration to sell us the arms.
Do you think that will change? That might change with you, or will that change with you?
It could change. It might not change, but we have to look at alternatives, and those are the mass recruitment of individuals in a volunteer army to really clean up.
So more people in your military forces, security forces, so to speak, as you said during your speech downstairs. Now, I just want to move away from that because I realize we don't have much time. There's also the issue of, Nigerians have lived under this Buhari administration for 8 years now, almost 8 years. Some would say this 8 years has come with a lot of pain and a lot of suffering. You are coming from the same perspective as President Muhammad Buhari, and you're members of the same political party. You helped bring him in to office nearly 8 years ago. What are you going to do different? Why should Nigerians be voting for you?
Because I'm different. I am Bola Ahmed Tinubu. I have governed Lagos. I built a modern state that could be a country on its own. I've led an administration that is so prudent, from 600 million internally generated revenue to 5 billion a month. That's a record. Nobody else can brag about that. I've treated and tamed the Atlantic Ocean surge in Nigeria that will have perished many people in Lagos. The infrastructural renewal of Lagos is excellent. I've continuity in Lagos. Buhari has done his best. I can't run away from him being my friend, my leader in the party. I will not.
Okay, sir. I mean, when you talk about money generated in Lagos, and I want to come to your own personal self. When you talk about, you're a very wealthy man.
How do you know?
Well, you know, I mean,
you are not my accountant.
I'm not in your account, but this is speculation, and it's fine. You can actually rebut it or not. When I look at some publications in the city are worth 4 billion, some is even more than that, but you refuse to explain where your wealth comes from. I know where you live in Lagos. It's a massive, sprawling mansion that takes up nearly a quarter of a street in a very expensive suburb. Why do you refuse? I mean, don't Nigerians have the right to know where the wealth of their next leader comes from?
Because they got to know how to analyze and how to ask questions, not in the accusatory way. Investment. One of the richest started from stock, but denying my wealth. I've not been governor in the opposition up to, from for 8 years and up to 2007. And since I left the office, I'm still there. I've not taken any government appointment, no government contract.
Yes, but some say the legacy you left in Lagos State was that, you were getting a share of the revenue that Lagos State was generating.
Hey, excuse me, share what? Have they proven it? The World Bank has, IMF has investigated the record in Lagos. What's wrong with them?
And I want to move away from that.
It's envy.
I think you've kind of explained that, and we don't have much time. If you are not running for president, sir, you have two main opposition candidates, Abubakar Atiku and Peter Obi, who people are saying, he's the young upstart, and I mean that in a very positive way.
Young where?
Young upstart.
Have they been governor of Anambra 8 years?
Anyway, Your Excellency, if you weren't running for president, which of your two major opponents would you be voting for?
None.
Why not?
Because they are not as competent as any other person out there. They have no track record. None of them is qualified except me.
All right, there you have it, and that is, the BBC interview that the APC presidential candidate was on. It's quite an interesting one, especially the ending part. Very, very, very between the two main opposing candidates. That's in person of Alhaji Atiku Abubakar of the PDP. Do you think if he had chosen someone, don't you think that would be some sort of endorsement?
Well, I think it's a bit of a political answer, but again, non-candidate, so it simply means that.
So are you saying that the interviewer was just trying to get under some skin?
A lot of takeaways from the interview, Sandra. Okay. I think a lot of Nigerians have always thought his recent comments, the fact that there's been a lot of flip-flop, the fact that he has a lot of sleeps, and people are like, hey, what's its mental coordination? How is he able to coordinate
More
himself?
Recently is the Chatham House
interview, and I had to delegate people to answer questions and all of that. But I have to say that the BBC interview from Peter Okoche, as a journalist myself, I must say he was very, very professional with the way he asked those questions. That's the way to ask tough questions without presenting yourself as if you're fighting your guest on the show. I must say that those questions were very, very tough questions, and the job requires that you allow the listeners to discern the answers themselves. Analyze the answers and see whether,
make it as open as possible.
Let them just decide. They've listened to the answers. It's now left for them to decide whether they
You've asked the right questions. Let them
decide, make their decision from the answer that have been given. However, I would have said that I was expecting a bit of more follow-up questions to some of the
It kept saying we didn't have enough time.
I was wondering why you were able to bring the presidential candidate of the APC, a country of over 200 million persons,
of the running party, the ruling party, exactly.
And you only did it for just about 8 minutes, and he kept saying there was no time. I would have expected that at least in the minimum a 30 minutes interview.
They're British, they're very traditional.
But what I would say is this, point for point now, Sandra. The last part, like I said, okay, maybe a bit of political correctness in trying to answer that question. But in terms of his priorities, he was asked that, look, if you win and you're sworn in February, or in May, 29, 2023, what would be your priorities? And he said, look, he was going to be looking at some key issues, security. He mentioned security, and that already means that he understands that, look, there's a problem with security. I'm sure if they ask him the pass mark to give to the president, although he tried to say, well, there have been issues of 17 LGAs, 4 states under the control of Boko Haram and ISWAT, but that's no more and all of that. But I know that for him to have made security a priority automatically means he understands that.
That one of the people that's part of his entourage at in the UK now is the governor of Kaduna State, who was complaining that he's running a parallel government
with bandits and terrorists in the state. So
maybe are getting his formation
the fact that, look, in terms of security, Nigeria is not doing anything good at this time. The other issue is economic recovery. So automatically he understands that, look, the economy is in a complete mess. We analyzed it this morning. Nigeria is hanging by the cliff. We need to do something very, very urgent to save the country. If you have a situation where half of what you make is going to service death, so it means that Nigeria is not making enough money. The little we're making, we're using it to pay debt, and we keep incurring more debts and all of that. So we have that situation which it needs to attend to. Then we talked about accelerated development. It needs to get Nigerians employed and bring inflation down, and then look at monetary policies.
When you bring up the pointers now, I now understand where you're coming from as regards follow-up questions.
Now, he mentioned something about subsidy needs to be decided upon and then removed.
No, so I think all our candidates actually agree that the subsidy should be removed.
Now, the question I would have asked him is this: the IPMAN, people that should know, have said that, hey, if we remove subsidy today, the average Nigerian out there would buy
as much as 500
naira per liter. So the question I would have asked him is, A, the promises the APC made in 2014 about fixing refineries before removing subsidy,